Today I'm going to just introduce what to do if your clients have a problem with financial services. So, hands up if any of your clients have ever had a problem with financial services. Yeah. And I think financial services are a hard thing because we call them financial services, but actually there are lots of different names that most of your clients will be more familiar with. They'll talk about loans, maybe credit, money transfers, insurance, banks, truck shops. All of those things are financial services. So the 4 dispute resolution schemes today that we're going to talk through, the issues that we look at, are going to look at that whole raft of things. So everybody probably in the room has dealt with a client who has a problem with those financial services. We've just got to get through some of that wording so that you know what it is that we do, and you can understand how when you pass your clients or direct your clients on to us, how we might help them and help them resolve the problems that they have. So we're going to have a look at what you can do to help your clients who have problems with financial services, how to make complaints, and then finally what it is that we all do at the different organisations who help resolve complaints about financial services. So we've got 4 different schemes today, and that's what we're going to look at. But most importantly, we have lots of things in common, these 4 schemes. All financial service providers, so all credit providers, all insurance companies, all banks, all superannuation, all those things, all have to belong to a dispute resolution scheme. And they also have to be registered on the Financial Service Provider Register. So if you're finding it hard to get hold of them, you can have a look on the Financial Service Provider Register. It's part of the company's office. And it also tells you which dispute resolution scheme that they belong to as well. All of the financial dispute resolution schemes are free. So that's good news for most of your clients. So we're here to help. We're an alternative to going to court. We're impartial and we're independent. We are informal and fair as well. So it means that your client doesn't have to have everything lined up. They don't need to kind of represent themselves. It's not a he said, she said kind of situation. All of the schemes will look into it. They'll look at the information. They'll gather more information if they need to as well. So the first step that your client needs to take is to see if they've got a problem. They need to, probably with you've heard their life story by the time you're directing them on to other people. So, one of the jobs that you're really good at is identifying what the problems are from that huge life story that you get and who else might be able to help. And if there is a problem with any one of those financial services, then you can direct your client to us. Most of the time, the issue, we suggest that clients try and solve the issue first with their provider. So they can. We suggest that they write. That could just be an email or a letter rather than phone, because they've probably phoned a couple of times and there's no real record to it either. So they need to write it down, say what the problem is. Really importantly, they need to say what they want the provider to do to fix it. That's the thing that most people forget. And they need to say, if it's getting to the point where they can't resolve it because they've made 10 phone calls or they're getting 10 phone calls every day, they need to say, I am making a complaint, so that the provider hears that it's a complaint. It's not just a gripe or a misunderstanding, it's a complaint. If your client is at the point where they can't resolve the issue, then please tell them to ring one of the 4 schemes. That's what we're here to do. We might not be ready to be involved yet. There might need to be a few more steps, but we can definitely tell you what the next step is. And sometimes that's just what clients need. They need to know, each step at a time, what the next step is that they need to take. So here's all the contact details. If you know which scheme the provider belongs to, you can ring the correct scheme. If you don't ring the right one, that's fine. We can all just refer you on to the right scheme that does, or we can tell you what the next steps will generally be for each of the schemes anyway. And if the issue hasn't been raised with the provider yet, then usually we'll direct you to raise that issue first with the provider. If your client has problems doing that, then we can help as well. We can fill in complaint forms and lodge that initial complaint if your client has needs that extra assistance, or if they're having problems just getting a response at all. it's a good idea to ring us, and we can see what those next steps might be, or whether we just need to make a phone call and chase it up, and suddenly there might be a response to that as well. So while we don't necessarily get involved at those initial stages, if there are any problems, please give us a call. You can give us a call on behalf of your client, or if you're working with your client and giving them, a list of the next steps, give them an 0800 number to call to do that, and they can phone us, normal office hours, and we have lots of information that that you can access as well in terms of things as well. So the important thing for your clients is not only are we free, but our decisions are binding on the providers. So that means the providers have to follow our decisions. It's not a suggestion. It's usually a decision if we get to the point where we're making a decision rather than an agreed outcome. But if your clients are not happy, they can still go to the disputes tribunal and do all those kinds of things as well at the end of that process. We think we're a really great service. We're all good services. We're all experts in the fields that we use, and our case managers are all very experienced, so we can help navigate what are often difficult fact situations to work out where the issues are for clients as well. So the next step in this is each of the 4 schemes will talk about some examples, so you get a flavour of what it is that we do, and we're going to leave a good 15 minutes at the end, hopefully a bit longer if we're all to time, so that you can ask us lots of questions, or say, what happens if, those kinds of things, and that you'll get the most out of it if you can have that discussion and walk away with something as well. So the next step is I get to talk about us now, after talking about all the other schemes. I work at the Insurance and Financial Services Ombudsman Scheme. It's a bit of a mouthful. We call it IFSO for short. And we deal with all different complaints about all different financial service providers. So we have insurance in our name. Most of the big insurance companies are members of our scheme, but we also deal with all different other providers as well. So credit providers, superannuation schemes, financial advisors, that includes insurance brokers and people like that as well, and some money transfer and things. So the whole gambit, if you like. But I thought I'd just share some examples of some work that we've done recently. So this is a case study about Colin. Colin was at home in March 2012, and Bob knocked on the door. Bob was a door-to-door salesman selling insurance policies. Colin said, look, when I talked to Bob, he said I should nominate 4 family members and sign these applications, and that I was signing up for a savings plan. I was saving up for these 6 savings plan. As an extra for joining up to these savings plans, I got 6 life insurance policies at the same time. So Colin was paying into them for more than 2 years. Things happened within his family circumstances, and he needed quite a bit of help. He was in real financial dire straits. He went to a budget advisor to get some help, to see if he could work things out. The budget advisor wrote to the insurer saying, look, Colin thinks he's got a savings plan. When I looked at the documents, I realised it doesn't look like a savings plan, it looks like an insurance plan. We want you to stop the direct debits, cancel the policies and refund the premiums, because that's not what Colin signed up for. Colin thought he had a savings plan. He didn't think he had 6 life insurance policies for these family members. The insurer agreed to cancel the policies, but it said it wouldn't refund the premiums because Colin had been sent these renewal documents for at least twice in the last 2 years, showing that he had these life insurance policies. So the budget advisor helped Colin make a complaint to the insurer through its internal complaints process, and that was as simple as writing a letter saying, I'm making a complaint. I'm making a complaint. Colin thought that he was signing up for a savings plan. It turns out he's got an insurance plan. We want you to stop the policies and refund the premium because it's not what Colin thought he was signing up for. Through the internal complaints process of the insurer reviewed it. So there's usually a separate kind of group or complaints or a manager who looks at that. The insurer was happy with the decision that it had made, that it wasn't going to refund the premiums. And then the budget advisor helped Colin make a complaint to us. when we had a look at it, we had a look at all the information, and one of the most important things that we did was we had a look at all the application forms that Colin had signed. So we signed 6, and when we looked at all of the handwriting on the forms and all of the signatures on the forms and the colour pen on the forms, it was pretty clear it was the same person who'd signed all of the forms. So 6 different life insurance policies signed by the same person with 6 signatures of that not of the particular person, but that they were supposed to be of the 6 different people, but they weren't. Colin had signed 6 different policies using other people's names. So we had some concerns about this because we thought when we looked at it, it was, there should have been some questions raised in terms of that. So we discussed it with the insurer, and the insurer said, well, he's still got all this documentation. That was true. Colin had 2 lots of renewal documentation showing him that they were life insurance policies, but the insurer offered to make an ex gratia payment. That's just a lump sum payment without any admission of liability, and that was about 75% of the premiums that Colin had paid over those 2 years, and Colin was pretty happy with that. And so they refunded the premiums, and Colin was still doing quite a lot of work with that budget advisor for a long period of time afterwards. It wasn't his only issue, which is not surprising either. But the good news is, last year, when I went to talk to some budget advisors, the budget advisor was in the room. And she told me that it was a very happy story. The family got out of debt and they went on their first holiday altogether. So it was a really great kind of end to that saga. It wasn't exactly what he wanted, because often people get into situations where they do have that they have a part to play in that situation, but this was a really good outcome for him, and it helped the rest of their issues get resolved as well. The next example I've got is Deborah. This is about a revolving credit contract with her credit provider. She missed a couple of monthly payments. Then the credit provider issued a full demand letter and listed all the defaults that she had with different reporting agencies. And the credit provider stopped sending Deborah her monthly account statements. Deborah said, look, I should get these monthly statements, because how do I know where I'm at if I'm not getting information about how much I know? I want you to remove the listings with the reporting agencies, and I want you to refund the fees that I've paid for those defaults. So she made a complaint to her provider that didn't resolve it, and she made a complaint to us. So the contract said the credit provider did not have to provide monthly statements if she'd breached the contract and it had taken steps to enforce it. So that's what the credit contract said that she signed. However, the CCCFA said that the credit provider was not required at that time to provide the continued disclosure if she'd breached the contract and it had commenced enforcement proceedings. The credit provider said that by issuing the full demand letter that it had commenced enforcement proceedings, because it had issued that letter and sent it through to its corrections department. So we looked at it and we said the CCCFA overrides the contract, first and foremost. And we looked specifically at the words commenced enforcement proceedings, and we said that those words were limited to court or tribunal proceedings. So those specific words in the Act had a special meaning. The provider hadn't commenced proceedings at court or tribunal, therefore it needed to pay, or the credit provider offered to pay her $2,000 and asked the credit reporting agencies to remove the default listings, and Deborah accepted that as the outcome of that. So what we do is quite in depth. Most of our case managers are lawyers, so we do look at all those niggly little words and look at the Act and make sure that the companies are providing with the Act. You might not see it in the decisions, but we go through all of those questions behind the scenes when we're doing our investigation as well. So don't feel, if you're working with a client, that you need to be the expert and you identify all the issues, because you are experts in all sorts of things as well. If you don't pick an issue, or the client doesn't know that they've breached the CCCFA, that's okay. We'll look at it. So all your client needs to do is say, I've got a problem and I need some help to resolve it, and we'll look at all those technical things in terms of that. Does So the last case study I've got is about Dan. Dan questioned his interest rates that applied to his credit card. He said that the lender had not correctly notified him about 2 interest rate changes over his credit cards. So the contract that he signed with the credit card allowed the lender to change the interest rate at any time. It had to notify the customer within 5 working days on the next monthly statement, or by posting or emailing a notice to them, or by a press advertisement. So we looked at this. In the first instance, the first interest rate change was notified on his monthly statement. It was really clear from that. The second interest rate change, it turned out that there was a problem in the system at the credit provider and it didn't go on the monthly statement. We looked at the triple CFA and said that the lender is required to, within 5 working days on the day on which the interest rate change took effect, to provide disclosure by giving it directly to Dan, by posting or emailing it to him, or by advertising it in the major daily newspapers and posting the information on their website. So we looked at the exact mechanics of how the lender had advised its clients of those 2 interest rate changes. So for the second interest rate change, it was a problem that affected every client who was affected by that interest rate change. It didn't go on their statements. It went, they were notified through other means. So when we looked at it, we said technically that they had complied with the triple CFA requirements, but the wording of the contract had a few words that were slightly different, and that the credit provider hadn't complied with the contractual requirements, which added another layer to the triple CFA. And we discussed that with the credit provider. The credit provider, we looked at how much extra interest Dan had been paid. It turns out the credit provider, in trying to resolve it, had already made a payment to Dan which exceeded the extra interest that he would have paid. But to try and resolve the issue, the credit provider made another payment to Dan, which Dan accepted, as a resolution of his issue. But this was a really important one because it had much wider implications. Because it had wider implications, we discussed it with the provider and we said, look, we think that there's a problem. Dan is just, one of the clients who is affected by this problem. You need to go and have a look at your contract. It's substantially different from the CFA, it's triple CFA. The provider said it would rewrite its contract, it would notify customers who were affected, and it would work to make sure that their products were aligned with it. So one of the things that the schemes do is we do look at systemic issues. So it's a fancy name for wider implications. So in this case, it did have quite a lot of wider implications. So Dan's complaint will go on and affect the practice of that provider going forward, because it's learnt the lessons from that too. So we do give a really thorough independent review of it. Sometimes it's not good news. I've given you lots of good news stories today. Sometimes it's not good news for clients as well, but we do work really hard with clients to explain exactly why it's not good news, why it's a no, why we can't help them. And for lots of people, they really need to understand. They might have been told several times by lots of different people. We try really hard to work with people, usually by phone, because people you can tell when people don't understand it from their voice and things, and we work really hard to explain it so that they do, even if it is a no there. We've got lots of information on our website, so if you have a client with you and you think, this client's quite capable of doing this work themselves, or it's really not the priority, they should go and address it, but there's some major priority things that I need to get onto now for them. Direct them to our website. We've got lots of information, like frequently asked questions, lots of information sheets, and my colleagues Zoe and Chris are there at the table with copies of those some of the information sheets, and we're happy that you just download them, or if you want copies, we'll post them out to you to give to clients as well. So that's about educating people about how they've got into the circumstances that they're in, and help empower them to understand that so that they don't get into the situation again, hopefully, that being best. All of the case studies that I've talked about today, and every single case that we investigate formally, are on our website as case studies. So if you've got a client who's got a problem with a loan or with an insurance claim or something like that, you can go and do a search there and see a similar scenario. That might be helpful if you're trying to give clients or set their expectations about the possibility that they might be wrong. Sometimes when they see a scenario that's a real life scenario and you can direct them to those case studies, they might understand it as well. It might be very similar to their circumstances, or it might lead you to go, well, look, this looks similar, it can't hurt. Give the If So scheme a phone call. It can't hurt to see if there's something else that you could do about this.